What's up, guys? Duke here for the Intimacy Liberation Army. I hope you guys are having an awesome post-Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber weekend. Today we're talking about the simple phrase I learned from a seminar a long time ago. You train people how to treat you. So I go to the bar tonight. I got this buddy there. He's super ADHD, super kind of all over the place, and much like myself, his mind runs 1,000,000 miles a minute, and so he has difficulty finding people to track with him, right? So he's talking, and he's drinking a little bit, so he's like, I got a question to ask you. And I was like, all right. And he said, how do I find friends? And I was like, all right, well, you seem to be doing just fine with all of your friends. You're like, no, not acquaintances, like friends, people who will like actually give a fuck about how I'm doing and shit. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So we got into this whole conversation. It turns out that the story that he's telling himself is that everybody basically just tells him to go fuck himself after a while. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have that same experience. But as he's having this conversation, I'm noticing all these little body tics he's doing, all of his little vocal things, everything that he does to, I guess the word is deference. He's trying to make sure that the people around him feel significant, and so he takes himself out of the equation. He'll back off and have like this real submissive posture, and he'll second guess the things that he's saying and explain his way out of it before anybody gives him any conflict about it. So I'm noticing this stuff, and I'm talking. And so I start laying it out. I said, look, like, there are many options on how to respond to people when they do things that cross your boundaries. There are many options on how to respond to people when they do things that make you feel bad. Then I went off on this weird tangent about how people can't make you feel anything. It's really your past references and drama that you're projecting onto them, but that's a completely different story. So people will do things that give you a response in a certain way, and you have an option on how you're going to behave in response. There's this guy at the bar, and I don't know, sometime mid last year, we started to get to know each other, and he would always try to make me a subordinate, right? He would always try to make me a subordinate. He was always super alpha, right? He was like, you, come here, right? And do this kind of stuff. And I have varying different levels of responses to people who are trying to order me around, but not because I have some sort of weird ego attachment to my place in the hierarchy, but because I have things to do, and whatever you have to say better be important. Otherwise, why am I stopping? This is weird. So I've dealt with those situations in a number of different ways. This particular guy, I would just ignore his ass, and then I'd come talk to him later, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I was trying to get your attention. I'm like, I know, but it was weird, so I wasn't paying attention. And it was there was a conflict there, right? So then he challenged me, and I would be like, oh no, it just seems like weird. Why are you snapping at me? Like what, am I a minion? Like, what's the thing? Oh no, bro, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, you can just, call my name or something. You don't have to treat me as if I was a servant, because I just think that's weird. Because I'm not a servant. Am I your servant? And he tried to do this a number of times last year, and I responded very similarly. It's like, I don't really care about your place in the hierarchy of power here. Like, I care about you as an individual. I care about me as an individual, so we can, interact in that way. I don't need to back up your alphaness. That's not my role. Get a harem or something. He eventually started to fall in line. He started communicating with me in a way that I would respond well, because I wasn't responding well in the other ways that he was trying to communicate. I was able to shape the behavior in our relationships just by setting small boundaries that weren't terribly confrontational, but getting a little confrontational when I needed to. And I ended up getting a lot of respect for that. Another time he was trying to get me to do something and just going crazy on the guilt trip and the whatever. And then I just stopped him. I said, look, I'm not going to do what you want. You can keep talking, But the more you talk, the less I'm compelled to do anything that you say, because like I feel like you're not respecting the boundaries I've already set. Is that accurate? You're not respecting the boundaries that I set, or are you just trying to get your way regardless of how I feel? Is that what's going on? Like, what's happening? And he was like, bro, no, I just don't understand why you don't. And he started getting angrier and angrier, trying to get me to submit, not because he was actually frustrated or angry, but because that's his strategy for when people give him conflict. So then they got really big, like he puffed up like alpha male, you know? And I said, all right, well, if you want to have a physical altercation, if you want to fight, I will probably win. Is that where we want to go with this? And I stared him down, and I wasn't trying to be like super ego and like, hey, here's my place in the hierarchy. I don't care. But it's just like, you need to stop treating me this way, or escalate like you said you're going to. Like, what are you going to do here? And he's like, no, bro, it's not about that, bro. Da, 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 da. And he just goes off. I'm like, well, I'm okay with us being uncomfortable with this conversation, but you can't talk to me like that and expect me to respond in a way that's favorable. So figure it out. So he didn't talk to me for a couple days. And then when we got back and started hanging out again, he treated me very, very differently. And it's not because he was afraid of me or there was some sort of weird like alpha hierarchical dominance bullshit. It was just the fact that like he tried some things that didn't work. So he's going to have to try different things if he wants to influence me or manipulate me or whatever. He's going to have to do something different. He's going to have to play by the rules. And so then now he respects those rules. At no time am I ever like, oh, whatever you say, I'm just going to give up. I don't like this conflict, so you win. Obviously, if the thing's not that big of a deal, like I'm getting older, like I stopped giving a fuck about most things. If something's not that big of a deal, I'm not going to step up and, beat my chest on it for no reason. However, if you're going to cross one of my boundaries or treat me in a way that I don't find acceptable or something of that nature, I'm definitely going to stand up for myself, because I spent my entire life trying to be a people pleaser and make everybody happy, and that shit doesn't work anyway. So I'm going to speak up and be like, no, we're going to treat each other like this now. Like, otherwise, I don't see why we're hanging out. We're obviously not on the same page. Like, I respect you, but if you don't respect me, that's weird. So he started treating me well, and we're good friends, and everybody knows the boundaries. I don't piss him off in an ego way when he needs to perform in front of people, and he doesn't treat me like a minion, and everything's fine. There are other people that I've done this to who kind of X'd me off their friends list, and they think that I'm a little bit too aggressive, and they think that I don't make them feel good, and I don't support their, okay, fine. I don't hang out with those people because they don't want to hang out with me anymore, because when they challenge me, I don't roll over. Great. So there's a double-edged sword to this. Some people don't like me because I assert myself. Sometimes I assert myself about things I shouldn't be asserting myself about, and I make mistakes and I fuck with people's feelings, and then they don't like me, and I lost a friendship out of that. Sometimes that happens. But more often what happens is I assert my boundaries, and then people fight for a little bit. But what happens more often is I assert my boundaries, people fight for just a little bit, then they decide to treat me how I laid it out for them so that our relationship can run well. And lo and behold, I love hanging out with the people who speak to me in a way that makes me feel validated and affirmed and respected. And those people love hanging out with me because I reciprocate. And it's a win-win-win for everybody. Back to this guy I'm talking to tonight. He's like, everybody just makes fun of me and everybody treats me poorly and whatever. I'm like, well, what do you do in your behavior that allows people to treat you poorly and cross your boundaries? Do you not tell them your boundaries so then when they cross them, there's no consequence? Is there no consequences to crossing your boundaries? Is there some sort of people pleaser, approval seeking thing inside that makes you go against your own integrity when somebody acts in a way that's outside of your understanding? What is this? And so he goes off and he explains a number of things, tells me a couple stories. But it turns out that basically he just wants everybody to like him. And you can't do that. You can't actually get people to like you, if you're trying to navigate around what you think they like. If you're spending your time trying to figure out and future project what they're going to respond with so that you can stay on their good side, then you're not projecting who you are into the space with vulnerability. So they can't inherently trust you because they don't know who you are. They just know that you're giving them what they want, and there's something that feels false about that. It's really hard to build rapport and trust with somebody that is constantly maneuvering to navigate around your approval. The title of this video is You Train People How to Treat You. And it goes back to this concept of, we were talking about manifestation a couple days ago. If somebody's treating you a certain way and it crosses your internal boundaries, you're allowing that to happen. You've manifested that behavior in other people. Some people are just dicks and they treat everybody like assholes, right? But most people just kind of ping off you and then they get away with what they can get away with. And it's not generally nefarious. It's not generally like they think, all right, how do I have dominance and power over everybody? How do I squish these people into the ground? They don't think about that. They just sort of act how they act, and then they get away with what they can get away with. And then if you don't stop them, then they'll keep acting that way. And if you feel badly every time you're around that behavior and you don't do anything to defend yourself against it, you don't do anything to navigate around that situation, communicate, be vulnerable in that space, you can't be vulnerable in that space, and you can't build real rapport. You can't build real trust. And so you're always going to have these surface level acquaintance type relationships where everybody's just jacking each other off. And it's like, I would rather have enemies who hated me for who I actually am than have a bunch of friends who loved me for who they thought I am, who they thought I was. Yep, you get what I'm saying. So my goal on a day-to-day basis is to continue to calibrate. Obviously, I want to come across well. Obviously, I want to leave decent first impressions. Obviously, I want to not alienate people and their feelings by being belligerently one part of me that isn't paying attention to the social landscape. On the other hand, I don't want to undercut who I am, the experience I've had, the moral rules and roles in social dynamics that I have made for myself just because I'm seeking somebody's approval. So I don't, and people treat me accordingly. So I was explaining to this guy, he's constantly doing these deference behaviors where he's submitting and allowing himself to be perceived of as weak in the face of this type of dominant alpha male type behavior. If he wants to continue to be treated as a weakling, then he's definitely showing people the signs. Say, hey, treat me this way. So that's my thoughts today on that. Your mission today is to write down one thing that you're running into in social relationships that kind of cross your internal boundaries, and realize that there are options to how you respond when those things happen. Write down 3 options, alternate things that you can do than what you normally do, so that you can try them out the next time it happens and see what the response comes back. Because if we're not testing new theories, we're not going to calibrate and ever get any better at this stuff. So your exercise, write down a thing that continues to happen that crosses your internal boundaries, and then write down 3 ways to handle it that are different from your normal patterns. Let me know in the comments what you came up with, and we will have an open dialogue about that. Check out all the things. Check out the whole challenge series there. Check out yesterday's video there. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Check out David's videos in the link below. I am Duke Delaet for the Intimacy Liberation Army, and I will see you tomorrow. Until then, stay awesome.